Welcome to Don't Waste the Chaos, the podcast where we dive into the chaos of entrepreneurship, leadership, and life, uncovering the stories and strategies that inspire growth, resilience, and impact. Today, I'm joined by someone who has truly mastered the art of turning challenges into opportunities. Friends, I want to introduce you to George Zimny. He's been on my podcast before. If you've been a longtime listener, he's a Columbia, Missouri native who grew up in a 1920s farmhouse and has spent his life chasing the thrill of entrepreneurship. From scaling a national wellness company to building and exiting a successful 10-office insurance practice, George has proven his knack for growth. Now he's disrupting the recruitment world with his firm, ProducifyX, which focuses on helping businesses attract top talent while complementing their existing HR teams. But George's story is about so much more than business. He's a husband, he's a girl dad, he's an Ironman triathlete, and he's a lover of organic cooking, scouting, travel, and music. So in this episode, we're going to explore the evolution of recruitment, strategies for sourcing top talent, and the most common mistakes businesses make when hiring. Plus, George is going to share how some small businesses can compete with big players and build recruitment strategies that drive long-term success. So if you're a business owner, leader, or just someone who loves a good story about building something meaningful, this episode is for you. George, welcome to the pod.
Thanks a lot, Kerri. Surprised you invited me back, but I'm humbled and excited to be here.
You know what? I love talking HR and operations with people. I just feel like those are topics that people don't talk about enough. And we were just saying before the show kicked off, like we belong in that same sphere together. And so I love hearing your insights. So let's go ahead and jump in. Let's talk about how recruitment has evolved in the last few years. Been some major changes. And what should business owners be doing differently to attract top talent?
Yeah. So, I mean, I live, my expertise comes from my own experiences and the clients I serve and the businesses I came from, so obviously what my background is not a one size fits all, but I co-own an executive search firm that's a top 20 Forbes-ranked company that's focused on C-suite and board placements. I'm not active in that business, but it's been a really incredible experience, being a fly on the wall in some of those conversations about recruiting, Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 executives. And I've learned so much from the teams that drive that business, the recruitment spaces. And then my current and full-time active role as co-founder and really a driver of ProducifyX is more focused on financial services, small and mid-sized businesses, financial services firms, real estate companies that have ongoing hiring needs that are growing, but not necessarily placing those top of the house executives like with the big companies at the executive search firm. So it's a really interesting, kind of well-rounded. I feel like a well-rounded experience of all kind of different levels of recruiting and candidate placements across a pretty vast, broad range of industries. But there's a few things that I think are obvious. Number one is candidates have more options now. We all know that. I mean, that's half of the discussion is it remote? Is it hybrid? Is it in seat in office? But the reality is candidates have more options in two areas. Number one is they can work remotely. And a lot of candidates still, even now we're many years past the kind of challenges of the COVID era and all the changes that came from that. A lot of candidates still want the flexibility to work remotely. But now we're also seeing candidates that realize and value in-person work and relationships in the workplace mattering again. So I've seen a lot, like in the last year, a lot of people being more willing and open than they were a couple years ago, post-COVID, it's coming back into the office and really value that culture, right? The office culture. But there is a reality still. Candidates have more options. A lot of people are carving out and doing the entrepreneurial path, right? They're joining the franchise path. They're creating, like you did, their own consulting firms. They're doing what I did. They're founding for almost no money to creating startups in the service industry and taking on a client at a time and making a great living doing so. People are driving for Uber, so things like that. So those options are still available, and that's something that corporations, small and large, have to compete against. Number two is AI, and not to beat a dead horse, but AI is changing the recruiting, hiring, candidate experience. That whole landscape is continuing to be advanced through AI. But I believe, in my experience, is that it's becoming more unique for humans in the workplace to actually express that they want to have a workplace relationship and a human connection with employees. And so I think there's a really beautiful balancing act between utilizing automation and AI and still being able to make a human connection and actually treat your people well. And that's a huge attractor of talent, is making that human connection. And then number three would be, and this is more relevant and recent, is politics. Politics driving change. And we're seeing a big shift in D&I initiatives. And I'm not saying it doesn't matter which side of, red or blue that you're on, or anyone listening is on, but it's just a reality in the marketplace that some companies are moving more towards D&I initiatives and others are moving away from them and just saying, hey, let's just attract the person that's going to do the job the best, right? Yeah. And others are trying to serve their client base that is maybe a more diverse client base. And they realize there's a reality that if you can serve a diverse client base with diverse leaders and diverse employees, that just makes sense. And so I think companies are taking a step back, or they need to take a step back and really assess, who are we? What's our mission? What's our vision for growth? What type of talent do we need to attract? And they should go down the path that makes sense for them, not the trend that the marketplace and the media is pushing. So, I mean, there's a lot changing beyond that, but like those are three things that I think are pretty obvious.
Yeah. And we could make a whole episode about those three things that you just said. There's I have a sidebar that I could go into on every single one of those. So yes, those are all really good points and things that I hope that leaders are listening to and really take the time to think through when it comes to their organization and who they're trying to be. So what are the most effective strategies for sourcing candidates in this competitive market that we've got going on right now?
Yeah. So when I had an insurance agency from 2009 until 2021 or 22. So for about 12 years. And then I had a good exit from that. And that's when I invested into the executive search firm. So we would recruit, get licensed, train, and develop somewhere between 100 to 130 new representatives per year across about 10 offices. That was really in our prime. So we had the biggest team I had on payroll at the time on the recruiting side. I had 42 people on payroll in my biggest year that were just focused on smiling and dialing resumes and vetting talent and facilitating assessments, like just on the recruiting hiring side. And so our philosophy back then is still my recommended philosophy today. And this varies industry to industry. In the tech industry, you may not use, salesjobs.com as a hiring source. You may use, a different channel that's focused on tech placements, right? But in general, I always recommend, especially a company that has ongoing hiring needs, doesn't really matter what the level of placements are, but ongoing hiring needs for a growing business, both large and small. It's a very simple philosophy. Pursue all sources all the time. And as long as you have ongoing needs, don't stop any of them. So one source is LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram. We could call that social. You should be posting something that really is the audience perception of what your postings are is like organic and authentic. And you're not trying to recruit somebody, or you're not just posting the job online, but you're posting something that's an attractor of your culture or your opportunity or your value proposition or the charity that you give back to as a business or an entity. And that's an attractor of talent. Post 3 of those a week. And then your fourth one says, hey, by the way, we're hiring, right? You should pursue the channel of online cold sources. A lot of the businesses that I serve with ProducifyX, they have a belief that online cold sources. So what I mean by that, like Indeed and ZipRecruiter and Glassdoor and, all those, the online cold sources don't produce as high quality of a candidate as like a warm referral source, right? Somebody that was recommended to you through a peer or in the community. And my argument is, aren't they both people? How do you know that an online source is not a superstar? You just don't know. Why wouldn't you pursue that channel? It's typically fairly inexpensive. It provides a higher volume. So you have to have the team or the service in place that can vet the higher volume of applicants. But yeah, it's almost like if you pursue cold outreach, you have to send out from a business development standpoint, Cold outreach means maybe you send 2,000 emails to get one client, but it's scalable. You know what those numbers are. It's it's very predictable, right?
Yeah.
That would be like the cold sources. And then, another major channel in kind of the pursue all the different channels all the time strategy. Another major channel is the warm channel. And that's constant. If you're a small business owner and you've got two key hires that you have to make, man, if you own your business and those hires are important to your future, I would be talking to every single person I know to figure out who they know that might be a placement for that really key role, right? And there's about 24 other channels that are unique to different industry segments. But I mean, again, if you have ongoing hiring needs, that your lever of growth is hinges on those placements and attraction of top people. You just can't fish in one pond because that may dry up, but don't exit that pond. Fish in 5 or 10 ponds all the time. And when one dries up, you're diversified. But you need to still fish in that other pond that dried up and forever, as long as you have needs, because the other ponds eventually will dry up. And then you start catching something over here. It's like the stock market. Don't just pull out because things are wonky or unpredictable. Like you have to, staying power in all these different channels is in my experience. And a lot, I served 130 unique clients across the US from east to west coast and everywhere in between, across about half a dozen different industry segments. And in my experience, the clients that are consistently fishing in lots of different ponds all the time without pulling out of of different channels when things are up and down, but they just remain consistent out there. They're the ones that are winning consistently.
That's spoken like a true sales master, by the way. Recruitment's such a great fit for you because you've got such an excellent sales mindset. And whether you're thinking about your recruitment team or your sales, this is a very similar, like what I was just listening to you say could have applied to my prospecting as much as it could apply to my recruitment. And so I think another good challenge would be if you're an organization that has a sales team, and I mean like sales studs like George, then I would say go talk to those people and say sit down with our recruiter or our HR person, or if you don't have one, you should hire an external organization like ProducifyX, but say okay, how do you prospect and how can that apply to me in my recruitment role? Because they are so similar. So what are some of the most common recruitment mistakes that you see business owners and leaders make, and how would you recommend that those get avoided?
Yeah. Great question. So I think that number one is, I think there's a trend of people over assessing and under connecting. And I know that you just became a facilitator of a really great assessment tool. And I think that that's something every business should look into. If it's through you or if it's through somebody else, every business should have some assessment tool that kind of fits their needs and fits their culture and fits the type of hire that they're looking to attract. Because there's so much data that can dictate and drive the next conversation or that decision that actually matters. Personality assessments and culture indexes and things like that. But I see a lot of clients over assessing and under connecting. And the connection part is really just sitting down without the pen and paper and the standardized interview questions, putting those aside and just asking. And obviously most questions, or most employers have very HR compliant questions that they can ask, right? So I get that. But in a way that's compliant to your business and safe for your business, to put a candidate in a safe environment and treat them ethically the way that they should be treated. You should still find a way to connect to what their vision is, what their goals are, and try to find alignment between your business vehicle and what their goals are. So I think assessments are important, but connection is also important. And I see a lot of businesses that they treat candidates like they're part of some assembly line process. They treat them all the same from a process standpoint. But the reality is humans are messy, as Brett Bashore always says. We're all a little bit messy, right? And we're all different and we're all unique. No two of us are alike, right? Or the same. And so we should have conversations with candidates and really try to listen to what their needs are and figure out if we can present a situation in our business that can help advance that person's life and give them a good vehicle to do better things in their life. And then secondly is I think that a lot of businesses lack creativity and flexibility through their hiring process. I've run now 4 businesses of my own, and I've always had processes in place and SOPs when it comes to recruiting and hiring. But at the same time, I've always been flexible to realize like, wow, I'm interviewing somebody for this role, but holy smokes, what if we created a role around their skill sets? How could that elevate our business? So like be definitely defined. Like every business should have some standard process. It doesn't have to be complicated. Some standard process for your hiring, the life cycle of recruiting and hiring, but also just having the situational awareness and the internal flexibility to make a pivot when you've got somebody with different skill sets that might be able to bring value in different ways. I mean, there's a lot of diamonds in the rough, and sometimes they don't present themselves to fill the need that you're hiring for oftentimes. And I mean, quick case study. I've got a client in St. Louis in the financial services industry, and he's hiring for a financial services role, but he recruited somebody to become his direct recruiter, right? He has situational awareness that like, hey, this person has certain skill sets and certain goals that are not necessarily what we are interviewing for, but let's reshape what a position could look like around those skills and around their goals. And this person's given their organization a huge amount of lift. And a lot of, especially small business owners, I see as just kind of being set in their own thinking and not always thinking as creatively and outside the box as they could. And I think there's a lot of missed opportunities because of that.
Yeah, you're kind of speaking to another like pretty common HR situation right now, which is like critical thinking skills. And whether you've got a recruiter who's doing the recruitment, internal or external, the person to be able to think critically and problem solve and say like, okay, the person in front of me, I'm not just like thinking so narrowly, it's not black and white. Because I do think the pendulum is swinging in society back to human connection. We got pretty far away from it for a while with social media and all that. And now I can feel this like pull back toward the one-on-one interaction and the intentionality between that. And so I'm excited to see what that brings in the next like 2 to 5 years. So let's talk about, I'm on my first business, and I say I'm on my first because I know that entrepreneurship is the right fit for me long term. You've done a handful, and I have no doubt that you're stopping where you're at right now. And we both are passionate about it. We're both passionate about small business. I find myself to be at a benefit, not at a deficit when I'm recruiting, because I'm like, listen, here are all the things that I can offer you on my business. I came from corporate, so I know what that has to offer. Here's what I have to offer. But a lot of times I will be connected with small businesses and I'll hear that kind of like scarcity mentality where our budgets are smaller, or we can't offer X, Y, and Z. And so part of that is just a mindset shift that they need to work on. But in your opinion, how can small businesses compete with larger companies that offer those maybe higher salaries or bigger benefits packages?
Yeah. So, and then maybe in parallel to that is my response, I think will be the same for both that question, but also how can companies hiring to fill commission or pay contingent upon performance roles, right? Which is a huge part of the marketplace now, right?
Yeah.
Financial services, real estate agents aren't guaranteed a salary, right? They have to go perform, which drives their pay. Kerri, I think that a mortgage broker in the household,
Yeah.
Kerri doesn't just show up and get paid, right? He has to go create value for a client to dictate what that return is going to be, right? So there's a huge, car sales, furniture sales, you name it, almost the majority of sales roles out there, which is a huge part of our economy and a huge part of why the US is such a beautiful place to live, is you've got that freedom to pursue those type of opportunities, small business owners, et cetera. So the answer is kind of the same to both. Both are competing with the big corporations, the big salaries, the big brands, which big brands bring forth traditionally great credibility and things like that. So first off, I think that a lot of employees in the marketplace are open-minded more now than ever to working with companies that are more startups and less traditional established brands in the market.
Yeah.
But I think that's a trend that's happened post-COVID. It just opened people's eyes to like, oh, well, maybe the environment I thought it was the only environment for me, their eyes become open and they become open-minded to a different environment, a different type of opportunity. But I think that how small businesses especially compete with the big corporate packages that are offered, I think that number one, they have to develop and be really good at expressing a profound vision of where their company is going and what's in it for the employee. Because people will give up pay to buy into somebody that they feel is going to lead them to growth, right? Versus just being a part of a bigger machine, if you will, of a big corporation. And I think that small business owners need to be willing to invest in the right people. And sometimes small businesses are a little more cash restrained. We're a small business right now. We're a team of 9. And we have a couple of key players, full-time people that we've been able to bring on that took about a 30% pay cut to come on with us, Kerri. But we provided long-term incentives and an opportunity to grow much further and much bigger than their opportunity to grow at the big corporation, the bigger corporation that they were working at. So you've got to exchange some, traditionally exchanging long-term incentives for short-term gain. But a lot of people won't pursue those type of opportunities if they don't believe in the leader and the leader's vision. So if you don't have a profound vision statement of where your business is going, create one, but don't just create one to put on a website. Create something that's authentic and real, that you understand, that you believe in, and that you're going to work towards and lead your team and attract your team towards. So, and then also, I think being willing to make a little bit of long-term sacrifice as your company grows. How there's 1,000 different ways that you can tie in people into also growing and also experiencing gains in their life when your company, maybe experiences an exit event or a merger or your company or profits. And there's a lot of podcasts. You hear a lot of startups and a lot of small businesses that tied their people in on day one. And when they exited, their people were with them through the exit. But without the people, you have to I realize that without my team, our business will never get to what our potential is. So we do everything that we can in our benefits package and our incentives and our bonus package to tie our people in. We paid out the biggest bonus in Q4 last year that I've ever paid out with any business that I've ever been a part of. And it was the best darn feeling. That was money I could have put in my own, my co-founder Ryan and I could have distributed equally between the two of us, but we paid it out to the team and it was unexpected. And it felt so good to us. And in the response from the team, the buy-in from the team, the gratitude from the team was so positive that we're going to have a sizable payout that's unexpected on a quarterly basis. Every single quarter, if our business wins, our people are going to win as well. And I think having that philosophy and putting incentives into place for people is something that people really buy into and they really believe in. And I mean, there's probably a lot of strategies that others have deployed, but develop a vision, invest in your people, and be willing to give something up as your people grow your company with you.
Yeah, it's just a limiting belief to say like, oh, our comp and benefits is less because it can be so much more. It just depends on one, you got to sell it appropriately because you have to believe that it's the right thing for your people and that it's something that's a blessing to your people. But there's a ton of, I've got a million ideas for clients to enhance that area, whether it's creative comp, like what you're talking about, or I've got some, unique benefit strategies that are outside of the typical, like medical, dental, vision, and flexible work, all of that. So yes, I hope people take that as a breath of fresh air instead of a restriction and think about a way to sell that. So how can businesses build their recruitment strategy that supports their long-term growth, especially with a focus on scalability?
Yeah. So, all these questions depend on, are you talking to an established business that wants to enhance that? Or are we talking to the local tire shop owner that wants to eventually buy another tire shop across town? And they know that they have to have great people to scale and grow, or something in between.
Yeah.
But I think so. My recommendation would be tap into the unlimited online resources that are available to all of us now through podcasts. I love podcasts. I love listening to your podcast.
Thank you.
There's so much that is gained through things like this. I think, more than ever in the history of the internet, there's never been more real, authentic conversations being had that you can, anybody at any point can go to any podcast platform, type in recruitment, type in hiring, type in strategies, take 5 minutes or review a few profiles of what that podcast is all about. Find the specific episodes that apply to them, or go to ChatGPT and type in, I'm a mid-sized business. I need to develop or refine my strategy to scale by way of recruiting and hiring XYZ type of professionals. Can you give me 10 podcasts that would be relevant? And tap into those resources. You get to be a fly in the wall in a conversation of two or a panel of real humans, business leaders that have been in your seat, gone through all the pitfalls, challenges, and failures, and are willing to just have an open conversation about what that strategy, what they learned through those pitfalls and failures to develop and refine a strategy that actually works. Take from that what makes sense for your business and then execute on it. It's really as simple as that. It's just having a willingness and being intentional to go out and find some stuff that applies to your business, listen to it, learn it, and then implement what matters.
Yeah, I agree. And I think most people, just like folks like you and I, like if somebody is genuinely interested in a topic and they reach out to me and they're like, hey, can we chat about this? Now, if I feel like you're trying to sell something to me on the back end, I'm going to be skeptical. But if you're just like passionate about this topic and you're truly have a desire to learn, the odds are really high that I'm going to be like, oh, you want to talk about that? Like I do too. This is my passion point. Like I live and breathe this. And so there's a ton of professionals who feel the same way. And so using the resources out there. So I love hearing like your business has done really cool things in the last year and a half. And I love hearing about it. Tell us a story. Let's have a little story time about a small business that's transformed its recruitment strategy based on the impact that your company brought.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stories. I think given like the context of the discussion, like, I wish it was like a story about, saving the kid from the bear attack. It's like really, really interesting. Or
Not our world, George.
Layla, my daughter, and your son Keegan met for the first time and how awkward that was,
Yes.
Because they're just two young kids that don't know how to talk to a girl and vice versa. It's like the cutest thing ever. But just for like context of the discussion, I've got a client in the financial services space in Jackson, Mississippi. So like small market, small mid-sized market. And it's a very established wealth management practice. They've got, 15 or 20 advisors, full-time recruiter, a couple of established offices, brick and mortars, and they run a really, really successful practice. But their biggest lever for growth, because, 15 or 20 people in a business can only do so much in the 24 hours of the day, right? They can only manage so much assets under management. They can only sell so much, life protection type of products and services. They can only have so many client consultation meetings. So their biggest lever for growth is attraction of talent, both existing and licensed advisors that have already, have a practice of their own, but looking for maybe a different type of support system. Or attraction of career changers, net new talent to this business, right? That don't come from an industry background in wealth advisory, financial services. So for many years, they've mostly grown off of referral recruits, which is their existing advisors talking to clients, word of mouth, people recommending people to their office as possible candidates for a position. And they coin that referral recruits. And so in around September, October, we went through kind of the partnership vetting process with ProducifyX, with my company, and there was an obvious fit there. And so they brought us on. So I think our first month in the market was around somewhere around September, maybe. I'm going off memory. So what I do know is in our first 90 days of serving them in a different channel of recruitment that they've never really capitalized on, have never really gotten a lot out of, haven't really fully become experts on their side. We hit job boards like Indeed and ZipRecruiter, which quite frankly, a lot of people in financial services industry say those type of services are almost like it's painful, like finally like doing your own taxes. So you hand it off to a CPA, right? So a lot of people don't get a lot out of the cold online sources because they just don't know how to work them. Each one has different algorithms. The titling needs to be unique and attractive. The content needs to be descriptive in the right way that's attractive to, the candidate to apply. And then how you go through and facilitate a cold application from an online cold source and actually convert that to a contract with your business. I mean, it's like you may screen 100 to get one. So it's a huge amount of lift and work to work with the cold online sources to get something out of it in that industry. And that was their experience. In the first 3 months, we helped them with sourcing. We brought on a lot of applicants. We pre-qualified those applicants. We give those applicants after pre-qualified to them so they could then go through that company's vetting process. And they contracted 3 people in the first 90 days. That almost doubled the number of contracts that they did all year. Gave them a huge amount of lift. So it's just been really refreshing with our new business. We've been in business now about 18 months. We're approaching 2 years. And it's been really refreshing having partners that are clear on their vision of where they're going, have a product or a service that really matters and really does make an impact in the marketplace. They have a career vehicle that's actually helping candidates to pursue a better life if they pursue it to its fullest. But they're open-minded to exploring channels of recruiting and hiring that maybe is not the safe path that they've always known. And in this particular story, they matched up to all those characteristics, and it's been a great partnership. So
that's awesome. I love hearing that. So my last question to you is, tell us why you started this in the first place. I know what your background is and that you love starting businesses, but in particular, what inspired you to start a recruitment strategy firm? And what have your biggest learnings been over the past 18 months?
Yeah. So my co-founder, his name's Ryan Drysdale. And so he and I started this together. And so just a quick backstory. So in 2009, I was the first full-time insurance agent with an insurance underwriter in the state of Missouri. And I was like the first individual to really grow the state within this particular company. And I came in, and it wasn't uncommon for me to sit on the tailgate of a pickup truck on a farm somewhere outside of Columbia, Missouri, somewhere out in the boonies, pitching a supplemental cancer or life insurance policy to a farmer to then get some referrals and, go next door and talk to the next farmer. That was how I got started. It was organic. It was hard. There was a lot of rejection. It was humbling. It was an incredible experience. I would never want to repeat, but it was an incredible experience that I wouldn't want to take back because I learned so much through that experience about entrepreneurship, rejection, positive attitude, things like that. So I sold insurance for about a year. And then I realized, holy smokes, I'm an early 20s kid that came from just 3 years in corporate America. So no relevant insurance or financial services experience. I'd never fully run my own business. I worked with a startup, but I worked for the startup right out of college. So if I can do this, certainly somebody else can do this. So I realized, hey, and for me to scale, I need to scale beyond just myself. So I started just recruiting people. I was running classified ads. Well, the first 15 people that I invested into classified ads, it was newspaper ads back then, some online sources. The first 15 people I attracted, that I recruited in, got under contract with the insurance underwriter, personally trained, helped them get a license, onboarded them. I did everything soup to nuts, right? Like most startups or small business owners do. And the first 14 in the first year all quit. The 15th one came from pages 52 or 53 of an Indeed ad. And his name was Ryan Drysdale. And he didn't quit. And he stuck with me. Well, 10 years later, we sold our insurance agency together, had an exit, and then we co-invested into the executive search firm. And now we've started ProducifyX together. So we started ProducifyX. We started talking about this concept about 2.5, 3 years ago before we launched the business. And what we came up with was we wanted to create a service that we could offer to other generalist businesses, financial services companies, real estate offices, law offices, hospitality business. I mean, you name it, any small to mid-sized business that has ongoing hiring needs. We wanted to offer them something, and we were passionate to offer them something that we wish we would have had when we were co-running our 10 office insurance agency together, recruiting a couple hundred people every couple of years, right? And so that was really important to us. We saw that there were staffing firms out there that were like soup to nuts hiring, charging 20 or 30% forecasted first year comp for every placement. So that was already, I mean, there's 300 or 400 staffing firms just in St. Louis as an example alone. Like there's so many of them, and they provide an incredible service, but we didn't want to be that. We didn't want to be a duplicate of what is already pretty saturated. We didn't want to be an executive search firm because that would compete with a company we have a very significant interest in already. So we didn't want to do top of house one-off placements. That wasn't our expertise. And we didn't want to be just a facilitator of sourcing because we thought that there was an element that was missing, and that was the pre-qualification element. So we developed a program, a process, or a service that offered both sourcing, so like being a feeder system, an attraction of ongoing applicants on behalf of a client, that took the applicant from like the very top of the funnel, just a little bit down, got a little more information about the applicant, slightly warmed them up, and then was able to quickly facilitate an introduction to the client, ready for the client's more in-depth part of their vetting process. And what we found so far in the last 18 months that saved is, again, for every, let's say, 100 applicants that apply to one unique client, only 5 to 7 are interested and interesting to that client. So we do all the legwork to kind of work through the 93 to 95 that the client doesn't want to meet with, and also that doesn't want to meet with the client. So the client only gets kind of the best matches that they're able to then bring right into their process at a fee structure that's like totally different and much lower than traditional staffing models. So it's just kind of a little bit of a spin on sourcing and staffing and kind of our own spin. And so we just started with a clean slate. And it's just like, hey, how can we help all these businesses that we know have growing needs? Most of them are not really, really great, or they're not experts at the quote online job sources. A lot of them would probably argue that it's kind of a headache because they get so many applicants and so little return out of the applicants that come in, and take away that pain point. Very similar to a CPA that takes away the pain point of the taxes. Like every small business can do their own taxes. Why do they hire a CPA? Well, they just want the expert that's in the market to take that headache away at a cost that's pretty affordable and a value to cost ratio that makes sense. And that's kind of what we do on the recruiting side. So I know that was long-winded, but yeah, someone asked me like, hey, what's your 2-minute elevator speech on your business? I'm like, depends on who I'm talking to. But if it's somebody that doesn't know business, I say, we're a recruiting company. If it's someone that knows business, I say, well, we're sourcing a pre-qualification. But it's kind of like, when the toothbrush was invented, like people had to be educated on what this thing was and how it worked, because it's a little different than the floss pick, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of where we are.
And the beautiful thing about you all is you've got your lane where you're trying to provide value, and you do provide value. And what I've learned is in business, the best thing you can do for yourself and for others is just to be clear on that and to not be everything to everybody. And I've referred you to clients, and for some clients, they are looking for that. Like, please just go do it for me from start to finish. Okay, you're looking for a recruiter to go do everything for you, and you're going to pay 20 to 40%. Like, you're going to pay bank for that, but maybe you don't have reoccurring needs. So this is just a one-time thing. You don't want to put the effort into it. But for my clients who are like, for example, we collaborate on a law firm, and that client's like, okay, we're wanting to grow over the long term. We're having a hard time finding attorneys, and we're support staff and things like that. And they know they're going to keep going. Like, it was a no-brainer. That was a really good fit for ProducifyX. And so I agree. Like, when I'm talking to people about it, I'm like, it's not a recruit firm unless the conversation's not going to go anywhere. And then I'm like, that's not a good fit for you. But I love to hear that. I love to hear your clarification. And I think that brings value to people. So how can people find you, and any closing thoughts before we wrap?
Yeah. So like I have no intention on this podcast or any other to ever be a business pitch. I just love that I love our dialogue. I love having an open conversation about things that we hope somebody can take away and apply to their business. I'm like more than a transaction. I'm always open-minded to talking to a business leader or a business owner that just wants to wants to bounce some ideas off somebody other than their own team to get an outside perspective. Like if I brought value in that conversation or over a cup of coffee in that way, the transaction part somehow with somebody else always works itself out. Right. And I think that that's something that more people should be open to sharing what they do, how they do it. Like you want to call me up and ask me like, hey, what job boards should my particular business post on? You don't need to hire me. I'll tell you what my recommendation is. Right. If you want the framework of how to recruit XYZ type of person, I'll give you my framework, right? Like through my last 20 years of recruiting experience across all the variety of segments I've grown businesses in. So like I'm a believer that like if you give people something of value, like the world's always going to pay that person back without you trying to get paid back. So anyways, that's my philosophy right now. Business is great. It's really healthy. We're growing and we're in a position where like we're not desperate to engineer a relationship with a new client. So if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I've got a LinkedIn newsletter as well. If you just want some free information about topics that revolve around recruiting and hiring best practices, that's called The Heartbeat of Recruitment. You can find it on my LinkedIn feed, George Zimny. And then our company website, you can also directly connect to me. Both Ryan and I look at all the comments as well as all communication through the website still comes directly to us. And we typically respond within 24 hours because we just love the interaction. We value timeliness. And our website is Producify, so ProducifyX.com.
Okay, great. And we'll make sure to link that in the show notes. And you can always go to don'twastethechaos.com/resources and find companies like George's, because we do promote ProducifyX. That is a partner of ours at my consulting firm, Salt and Light Advisors. And so we want to make sure to put those resources in your hands because we do find it to be a company of integrity and of value. George, I appreciate your time today. And folks that listened, I hope you found value. I can't imagine that you didn't. George always brings value, and we love it when you show up, and we love it when you focus on your own learning, growth, and development, because we know that running businesses and leading people can feel like chaos, but in chaos, there's opportunity. So don't waste the chaos, embrace it. Till next time.